Florida. Ukanya Maluku. My love, where are you? Baby, where are you? I'm waiting for you.
You know I miss you so much. Sweetie, here I am.
My love, where are you? Baby, where are you? I'm waiting for you.
You know I can never let you down. Darling, here I am. I'm here for you.
You know I love you so much. Baby, where are you? I'm waiting for you.
Chérie, chérie, coco. Bébé, coucou, bébé, I'm here for you.
You know I love you so much. Baby, where are you? I'm waiting for you.
Trésor, mon trésor. Doudou, trésor, mon chou, je suis là.
My love, where are you? Baby, my love, where are you? I'm waiting for you.
Honey, honey, honey. Baby, baby, baby. Darling, darling, darling. Sweetie, 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 I'm here for you.
My love, where are you? I need you so much, baby. Come for me. I'm waiting for you.
Trésor, mon trésor. Doudou, tu es mon chou. You know I miss you so much. Sweetie, here I am, oh, I'm here for you. Darling, here I am. I'm here for you. My love, where are you? Darling, here I am. I'm here for you. Chérie, chérie, coco. Bébé, coucou, bébé, oh. Trésor, mon trésor. Doudou, tu es mon chou. Je suis
My
là.
love, where are you? Baby, where are you? I'm waiting
Mon
for you.
bébé, mon trésor, oh. Mon amour, mon bébé, oh. Je suis là, oh.
My love, where are you? Baby, where are you? I'm waiting
You
for you.
know I miss you so much. Sweetie, yeah, yeah.
Now there go separate ways, baby, I'm waiting for you.
Annie, Annie, Annie. Annie, oh. Baby, baby, oh. Chérie, je suis là. Tu m'as beaucoup manqué, oh. Je suis là, chérie.
You are the love of my life,
Mon miel,
baby, baby.
mon amour.
Honey, honey, honey,
Je suis là, eh.
sweetie, sweetie, sweetie.
My baby, my darling, my honey. I love you. Oh, yeah.
My love, where are you? Baby, where are you? Darling, where are you? Honey, where are you? I'm waiting for you. I'm waiting for you. I'm waiting for you. Baby, baby, baby. Darling, darling, darling. Honey, honey, honey. Sweetie, sweetie, sweetie. I'm waiting for you. I'm waiting for you. I'm waiting for you. You don't know why I buried the Joa. 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 Baby, don't go. Louis. Darling, darling, darling. Sweetie, sweetie, sweetie. Honey, honey, honey. Baby, my love, I'm waiting for you.
I'm here for you. Annie, Annie, baby.
My love, where you go, I'm waiting for you.
I can never let you down. Baby, my darling.
My love, my love, my love. Come now, come now. Yeah. My love, where are you? Baby, where are you? Sweetie, where are you? Honey, where are you? I'm looking for you. I'm waiting for you. Sabino the hide.
Every day, billions of people come here with questions about all kinds of things. Sometimes we even get questions about Google search itself.
Seseko and Mrs. Engineer Biya'S Senior Charles Tato of Houston. Oh no, Madame Angela. Biya'S, PhD. Oh no. Biya'S Junior Charles. Biya'S Epovechu. Biya'S Eyong Jam Josh. Coordinator and organizer. The one of my Seseko Engineer Biya'S Charles Tato of Houston, Madame Angela Biya'S. Oh no, Mr. Ibi Aretako. I have a bring it up. 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 Madame Angela. Engineer
the heat. My people are not fools on the heat. You must let my people go, so we can rule from Cape to Cairo. You must free my people's hands, so we can rule our purpose land. I wanna know who owns the land. Who wanna know who owns the land? Okay, now listen carefully. Chinese are ruling the Chinese land. Japan is ruled by Japanese. England is governed by Englishmen. America is governed by Americans. So, Africa must be ruled by Africans. I wanna know who owns the land. We must rule from Cape to Cairo. We must rule our purpose land. I say, we want to know who owns the land. I want to know who owns the land. Aslan, hey, Papaslan, Papaslan, Papaslan. It must be free. Angola wants to know who owns the land. Mozambique want to know who owns the land. Namibia wants to know who owns the land. I say, Soweto wants to know who owns the land. Zimbabwe wants to know who owns the land. African freedom fighters want to know who owns the land. Purpose land. Now listen to the history. We've been here since creation. We've been here since creation. What does one know? Since the time of sun and sun. Since the time of moon and stars. Since the time of air and sea. Since the time of men and things. We must run from Cape to Cairo. Okay, now I want to talk to my people. Now we are the crossroads. On the Femo,
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, fellow Ambazonians, and welcome to the broadcast. I should start with some apologies for this late coming. Today, we had some unforeseen technical problems, but I am glad, I am excited. We're finally able to make it here tonight. Good evening, Ground Zero. Good evening, Ground One. Of course, I always forget about you, but I remember you today. Good evening, continental USA, Canada included, and of course, South America. It's always a privilege to come to you with updates on our revolution. I have a very, very exciting show today with personalities that you can learn a lot from. So please, I'd like you to stay tuned. And as usual, I expect you to go ahead within 5 minutes. Within 5 minutes, hit your share button. Let us make it at least 700 people on the Facebook platform. And so I can come to you with the presentation proper. I want to believe all of you had a wonderful weekend, except for those on Ground Zero who have to run away from bullets and from terrorists on a daily basis. So please go ahead again, as usual, hit your share button. Let us populate the platform. We have over 400 already. on Facebook. Within the next 3 minutes, hit it up to 700 so that I can come to you with this broadcast proper. I have with me in the set, on the set, from my right, I have with me Comrade Valentine, Barrister Valentine Gala from the great state of Arkansas, joining me live from Arkansas. And I also have right there, I would have said ladies and gentlemen, but because Ghana is right on my right, I choose to go with him. But you have the one and only one powerful Amber lady who has distinguished herself, who is part of this panel tonight, by the name Dr. Emma Osong. I hope I got the last name right. She is Dr. Omar Osong. She is an aerospace engineer. I hope I got this right too. She is also an author, a political activist, and of course, one of the leaders of this Amber Revolution. This is the first time she's joining us on ABC. And of course, I have a familiar face that you always know, recognize, the one and only Intumfoin, Bo Herbert, joining the set. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I will get back to you. I need to take some, do some housekeeping before we get back to this conversation proper. So before we get there, all right, I need to do a few updates and some announcements too. Fellow Ambazonians, we have an NGO that is based in Boya. That NGO is called, let me locate the name of that NGO. That NGO is putting up an event in Boya, and that NGO is one of the NGOs being sponsored by the French, and I mean France. This is one of the peace, so-called peace ambassadors NGO that is being sponsored by the French embassy precisely in Yaoundé. They are hosting this event on the 20th, December 20th, that's about 4 days from today, at the Mountain Hotel in Boya, and time is 11 a.m. And that NGO is called Kawopen, Cameroon Women's Peace Movement. Kawopen, Cameroon Women Peace Movement. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you this information to remind you, especially if you are one of the managers of this NGO, one of the directors of this NGO. This NGO is one among those banned from doing any form of business in all of the territory called Ambazonia. And we have passed this information to the restoration forces that we do not want to see this NGO, Cameroon Women's Peace Movement, doing any form of business anywhere in the territory that is called Ambazonia. And so this meeting scheduled for Mountain Hotel in Boya on December 12th is banned from happening in our territory. We will not, again, these women are making gains, making profit all over the dead bodies of Ambazonians, and we will not tolerate them holding this conference at a Mountain Hotel in Boya. And so again, we have given our restoration forces instructions to stop this meeting holding at the Mountain Hotel on Saturday, the 20th of December. This meeting is not taking place, and again, this organization, Cameroon Women's Peace Movement, is banned from having any business in Ambazonia. We have made it very, very clear from our last broadcast that we are only tolerating NGOs working on ground zero, affiliated with United Nations, is it to call it OCHA, based in Boya. Any other NGO not affiliated with OCHA is not welcome on ground zero. And the so-called peace ambassadors, they are banned from having any business to do with ground zero. And again, Cameroon Women's Peace Movement, your conference holding at the Mountain Hotel in Boya on December 20th is banned. Is banned. And restoration forces have been given instruction to enforce this ban. You go there or participate in that meeting, you do so at your own risk. All right. That is very, very critical. Then, ladies and gentlemen, La République, a few days ago, La République du Cameroon issued a statement in French allegedly withdrawing all its forces from Ambazonia into the barracks between December the 15th and January the 5th. We do not know how authentic that piece of information is, but we believe this is a ploy by the regime in Yaoundé to clamp down on our restoration forces. We are advising our restoration forces and the general Amba population for Christmas and the New Year to please stay at home to celebrate your Christmas and New Year. This is for your own safety. We have received information that even though La République du Cameroun pretends to want to pull out its troops from our territory, they will be leaving out many snipers on the streets and in the quarters because they believe the restoration forces will be out to celebrate Christmas and to celebrate the New Year. And so we're encouraging all the restoration forces and the general population of Ambazonia, please do everything possible to stay home as you celebrate Christmas and the New Year. Again, this is about your own safety, your own security. We do not trust La République du Cameroun. And besides that, we have also learned that they are sending in thousands of troops into Libya. Instructions have been given French Cameroon troops to get Field Marshal dead or alive before February the 9th. This is intelligence that we have received. And so, if you are in Libya, living anywhere in Libya, we caution you, the coming days will not look very, very good. La République is invading Libya with the goal of destabilizing the Red Dragons and, if possible, killing or abducting the Field Marshal. So please take note of that information. Then, ladies and gentlemen, we are declaring an Armageddon over French Cameroon planned elections for February the 9th. We are asking every Ambazonian, these elections, every one of us can play a role. You can play a role, even if you are not a restoration force or restoration fighter, you can play a role by staying home for all their election activity. Number 2, expose any election campaign taking place in your community, in your quarter, wherever you live. You find any election campaign, please send the news to us or send the news to the closest restoration camp around you. You can, this is the role you can play by disseminating information about any election campaign and or calling the restoration forces to report any campaign activity in your area. This is very, very important. We have banned that election from taking place in our territory, and we mean business. We declare an Armageddon on that election, La République du Cameroon shall never, 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 ever have the right to conduct any form of political activity on our territory. And so please, everybody, let's all work together to frustrate La République du Cameroon's February the 9th election. They are out distributing money even through SDF parliamentarians and senators. We just saw what happened in Batibo. We learned that in Bandam, Joseph Mbandam, the one who said in 2019, October 22nd, 2017, I beg your pardon, that he has resigned from politics, from CPDM, SDF politics. He went to Batibo. We have learned that he allegedly dished out 15 million to one of our commanders so that he can allow them to carry on their campaign. Unfortunately, I've just seen some very terrible photographs coming from Batibo of his home razed down. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a message to every enabler, be it CPDM, SDF, who wants to run for French Cameroon organized elections. Let us all tell them they are in the wrong territory. They are in the wrong territory. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have almost 1,000 people already. Thank you for joining the program. As we go ahead, please continue to hit your share button as you join. Continue to hit your share button as you join. At this moment, I would like to take us into this broadcast proper with the conversation with my panel here, Comrade Bo Herbert, Comrade Ghana, and Comrade Emma. And so, why I bring that conversation to you, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to again continue to hit your share button, continue to hit your share button as I bring you the monologue for this conversation. And once more, I'd like to say good evening to you, Ground Zero. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Ambazonians, within the last 3 weeks or so, we have observed one move after another from either the international community to pressure La République du Cameroon to end the genocidal war on Ambazonia, or from French Cameroon aimed at furthering its killings of southern Cameroonians all the way to the end of the conflict and towards actualizing its annexation of Ambazonia. To put it in another way, when it is not the international community exerting tremendous pressure on La République du Cameroon to end the genocidal war in our territory, Ambazonia, it is La République du Cameroon executing one fraud after another in the guise of providing solutions to the conflict. Barely a month ago, we watched from the floor of the House of Commons in London members taking turns to demand that La République du Cameroon be expelled from the Commonwealth and that the UK steps up diplomatic pressure that gets La République du Cameroon to end the humanitarian catastrophe in genocidal war. Just when we thought that was all, another pressure group, a delegation of 3 made up of the leaders of the Commonwealth, the African Union, and the Francophonie, descended on Yaoundé with more pressure to bear on La République du Cameroon. Since returning to London after that visit, the head of the Commonwealth, we have learned, has issued what one should consider an indictment on the regime in Yaoundé, bluntly threatening in the statement to Paul Biya that the Commonwealth is deleting his country from the concert of the former British colonies, should Paul Biya delay in showing commitment towards ending the war and ending the genocide emanating from the war. But just when you imagine that these should humble La République du Cameroon to the extent that they have a rethink of the provocation they have carried out to exacerbate this war. Last week, its parliament voted to pass just another obnoxious bill, the so-called bilingualism bill, a bill that should only further the annexation and integration policy of Ambazonia by La République du Cameroon. When the United Nations Security Council members, the USA, Belgium, the Germans, and the Poles, amongst others, issued a stinking impeaching statement calling for La République du Cameroon to stop the atrocities and immediately embrace the Swiss dialogue initiative. Guess what happens? Mr. Biya jumps the next day and summons an extraordinary session of Parliament to consider his special status for Ambazonians, in which he hopes to assuage the wrath of the international community. This doesn't last long before the U.S. Congress issues a stinking letter, a statement that essentially indicts French Cameroon and its military of the killings and the destruction of homes and villages. In this congressional letter, La République du Cameroon is once more, ladies and gentlemen, urged to cooperate with the Swiss initiative. Then, immediately, the congressional letter lands on the table of the regime in Etude. Whoever runs it from there, a communique exclusively in the French language as usual, is sent out asking all their troops in our territory to pull out beginning Sunday, December the 15th, that was yesterday, until after the New Year. The point is that La République du Cameroon, ladies and gentlemen, is fighting tooth and nail with every rudimentary tactic in the book to avoid ever-mounting international pressure. But its own missteps only keep on keeping them in the net, in the domain of pressure. Last month, they hurriedly put together the so-called Grand National Dialogue, hoping the idea bails them out of international pressure and give them reasons to avoid the Swiss negotiations. They thought they could blindfold the international community with a window dressing measure called special status. The mystery in the special package or special status has finally been unveiled. Though still on the table of debate, rejection, especially from those who have all along been allies of the regime, has set in. So the question is, after the world rejects their Grand National Dialogue, rejects their so-called bilingualism, rejects their special status, and insists on negotiations without preconditions, what next? What next is La République du Cameroon going to do? What should Ambazonians be doing now to keep the pressure mounting? Our panel answers these questions and also take your questions. So, ladies and gentlemen, join me once more. Welcome the panel to the set. Again, I'm joined by Barrister Valentine Ghana, Dr. Emma Osong, and Ntumfoin Bo Herbert. Good to see you, ladies and gentlemen.
Good to
Thank
see
you.
you, Chris.
All right. I will start. If we were in the gathering, of course, it will always be ladies and gentlemen. So let me start with the lady in the house. Dr. Olson, to be where we are today, would you give this mounting pressure on our Republic to Cameroon on the effort that Ambazonians have put forth?
Chris, I'm having some trouble hearing you. Could you repeat that?
Okay, I can hear you. Yes, I am asking, would you give the credit for the pressure that La République du Cameroon is having to the effort that Ambazonians continue to put forth?
I got you there.
All right.
Thank you, Chris, for this opportunity to have this discussion with my co-panelists here, as well as your audience that are gathering around the world. I want to commend your effort to communicate directly with the people on Zero, and begin by expressing my deepest condolences for all our brothers and sisters who have been killed as a result of this war, and also offer prayers for those who in this festive season of Christmas have very little to celebrate, and that their brothers and sisters and the goodwill around the world have them in mind, and as effort to date to bring aid and comfort and cessation of hostilities to them. So with that, let me go to your question. You're asking, if I understood you clearly, whether credit for what has happened to date is for the diaspora. Is that what you said?
Yes, it's not for the diaspora, for Ambazonians as a whole.
I believe so, Chris. There's something to be said about mobilization, activism practiced by Ambazonians since 2016, a quality that no one around the world guessed was in our DNA, which is to stand up, to rally, to spare no effort, knocking at doors, calling on the international community. There is a statistic out there that I believe Ambazonians have earned for themselves, which is the rapid approach, the rapid method they have used to bring the crisis of their people to the doorstep of the international community. Even though 3 years of suffering is still ongoing, it has been one of those tragic wars in Africa where Ambazonians' activism has allowed the world to begin to turn its attention to that part of the world. Mind you, we still need more of that. And more importantly, we need to also now start turning our attention to engaging with the international community in a manner that shows our collaboration, our cohesiveness, and our clarity, the singular focus that we want the world to come to our aid around, which is cessation of hostilities, a return to the state of our people, which is free, independent, and good neighbors in the region of Central Africa. So you are right in saying that the credit goes to Ambazonians. It goes to them, but there's still more work to be done. There is still lives. There is still an occupying force in every village in Ambazonia. There are deaths reported. There are not going to school. So the crisis is far from over. I don't believe there is any moment now than before to insist and put more pressure and continue to call on the international community to not relent. As I speak, you just mentioned the UK. the UN and all the Security Council members' outings this past week, calling on the Biya'S government to end hostilities. Of course, we've seen the recent outings by the Subcommittee on African Affairs, calling on an independent investigation into the horrific human disaster unfolding that has been described by some as genocide in the making. As I come to this program this afternoon, I've just been made aware of a group in France that is a coalition of French-speaking people and those of Quebec, writing to the representative of France to the United Nations, calling on them, as a matter of fact, shaming them about their absence and silence during the past UN Security Council outings. In other words, asking them whether, is this the time for France to be quiet, rather than coming out and condemning their student, Mr. President Biya, as to what. So I want to close the piece by saying that, yes, we must have hope. This is not the time to celebrate. Our brothers and sisters are still dying. We are still under the barrel of a gun. Our children are not going to school. Our young sisters are being raped. We still are far from living as free people in our own land. And now is not the time to celebrate. We must roll our sleeves, get to work, and actually begin the project everybody is looking for us to do. Us, meaning the Ambazonia Southern Cameroonians, as well as the other parties to the conflict, the Republic of Cameroon, to engage in substantive actions that once and for all return permanent, lasting peace to everyone in the region.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Let me go to Comrade Ghana at this moment. Comrade Ghana, in spite of all the pressure, La République du Cameroon keeps on moving from one window dressing effort to the other. Isn't this international mockery to the international community? Comrade Ghana? Comrade Ghana, can you hear me? All right, Comrade Bo, I will pose that same question to you. Isn't it mockery of international proportion that La République du Cameroon continue to carry on all this window dressing, ignoring the pressure that is coming from the international community?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chris, and welcome Emma Osong, welcome Brother Ghana to this show. And my greetings to our people on Ground Zero, our people locked up in the dungeons of La République, our people, you know, just trying to survive in the bush, in the forest, in refugee camps, our people, you know, out there doing battle with La République du Cameroun and making sure that they can defend our communities and our people. I don't think, Brother Chris, that La République du Cameroun is ignoring what is going on. La République du Cameroun is in a corner where they do not know what to do next. Remember, it is said by Chino Achebe, those the Lord wants to destroy, the first make mad. And remember also in the Bible, when it was time for Pharaoh to be delivered the worst defeat, he was as obstinate as Mr. Biya is right now. So he is fully aware of what the world is serving him by way of notice. The Security Council and the Congress of the United States, two of the biggest institutions that lead to independence for any people, have said very clearly, go to the negotiating table without preconditions. Mr. Biya knows he cannot get around that. They have also told him, in no uncertain terms, you will not win military victory against the people of Ambazonia. And they have said, we hold you responsible. We hold you responsible and we hold your troops responsible for what is going on. They have now just said in a statement by the president, the chairperson of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the US Congress, that they do not intend to allow impunity with respect to the mass human rights violations, gross human rights violations that have happened so far. So Mr. Biya knows that he is an unindicted war criminal. He knows that he is going down. He knows that this 2020, if he survives to see it, will be a year during which he will be unmade. It will be a year when he will be pulled down from that presidency and when Ambazonia will be free, because the world is gladly waking up to the reality that we have been singing ever since, that we are two people, two countries, two independents, two territories, two republics, and that we have no business to be attached to these people. Mr. Biya is hoping that all the small gimmicks that he tries, whether it is major national dialogue or it is special status, that this could fly. But the letter from the Congress of the United States says in very certain terms, it says those internal initiatives have failed and they will fail. They serve him advance warning that elections will serve no purpose, that disarmament and demobilization will serve no purpose, that all these fictitious things he's trying to do will serve no purpose. And the last warning is that they are accessing policy towards Cameroon. And if you remember, Ambassador Thibault Nagy had said the boundaries of Cameroon are as of now. When they're accessing policy with respect to Cameroon, we expect sanctions to follow. We expect the division to be concretized, and we expect the United States to reaffirm its vote, along with 63 other countries, on the 21st of April 1961, to recognize Ambazonia, Southern Cameroons at the time, as an independent country.
Comrade Ghana, I don't know whether you heard the question. Did you hear the question?
I joined in when Comrade Bo Herbert was speaking, so I did not hear the specific question. If you wouldn't mind repeating that to me, I would appreciate that.
Sure. The question was, isn't it essentially mockery of international proportion that La République du Cameroon continues to ignore the voices from the international community?
It's absolute mockery, as Mr. Bo Herbert very articulately said. But I want to take a look at it from a different angle. I want to take a look at it from the historical basis of how French Cameroon came about and how the independent nation of British Cameroon came about, or Ambazonia. We have to go back to the First World War, and we have to remember that it was the projection of United States power that defeated Germany and saved France from the boots of German aggression. It was following World War I at the Treaty of Versailles that British Cameroons came about and French Cameroons came about. La République du Cameroun, with the overt assistance of France, is acting as if La République du Cameroun or French Cameroon is the successor state of German Cameroon. Absolutely, it is not. La République du Cameroun is acting as if during the Treaty of Versailles, the whole of German Cameroon, absent the parts that were carved out to Central African Republic and others, that France was the sole trusteeship that the German Cameroon that was left over was given to. Absolutely not. There was a British Cameroon and a French Cameroon. And for France to be supporting La République du Cameroun the way it is not just a mockery of international law, but it is spitting directly into the face of the United States, who came and saved France from German aggression. Fast forward from the end of First World War to World War II. The only way France maintained Alsace-Lorraine, which was given to France at the Treaty of Versailles at the conclusion of the First World War, was because Woodrow Wilson, the American president then, presided over the Treaty of Versailles. The same Treaty of Versailles that gave France governorship over Alsace-Lorraine gave the right of British Cameroons as an independent entity in international law. Again, US power saved France from the boot of Nazi tyranny, and France is turning and repaying the free world. France is turning and repaying the United States by going contrary to US policy that is rightfully so in Ambazonia, by spitting in the face of the United States and supporting French Cameroon.
Let me stop you a little bit there and play the devil's advocate here. The French will say, Cameroon is our colony. Used to be our colony. We still have treaties with Cameroon. Why would they have to listen to what the US says?
On January 1st, 1960, French Cameroon, called La République du Cameroun, got its independence from France, or pseudo sort of independence, hyphenated by the 1959 French Accords. When French Cameroon got its independence, as authorized by UN Resolution 1514, the Southern Cameroons, or Ambazonia, was not part of French Cameroon, was not part of La République du Cameroun. The boundary between Ambazonia and French Cameroon has been demarcated by the United Nations. And so France has no legal authority or title to the extension of French Cameroon to Ambazonia. Ambazonia is an independent entity in international law, consistent with the Treaty of Versailles, consistent with UN Resolution 1514, and consistent with UN Resolution 1608. So France absolutely does not have that claim.
All right, talking about France, I will pose this question to all of you. We have seen that of all the major powers, let me put it this way, the international community, you have the Americans, you have the EU, you have the Commonwealth, you have the Canadians, of course the Swiss, and you can name the rest. Each of these powers have said they want dialogue, negotiation, without preconditions. And France is the only country that has said we don't endorse the Swiss initiative, and what took place in Yaoundé in the so-called Grand National Dialogue is the way to go. What is it going to take? What should Ambazonians do to get the French off the back of this revolution? All of you, any of you can take the question. I'll start with Emma.
I was just going to interject there that the last I checked, the country France was a member of the European Union, and by extension endorses the Swiss-led initiative. So I do see a scenario where,
if I may stop you there, I think you may be wrong there, because only I think 2 weeks ago I had Rebecca Tinsley here of the organization called, is it World Peace or something like that. Remember, she initiated the letter with 50 signatures that was written to the French president asking them to facilitate the Swiss dialogue. And the French replied and said, what took place in Cameroon, the so-called Grand National Dialogue, is what they endorse. So, yes, the European Union may be saying, we stand for the Swiss initiative, but the French are behind sponsoring a different agenda. What is it going to take for Ambazonians to get the French off of this revolution?
I think you're asking the question, and the onus should really be put on the country France and not on the good people of Southern Cameroon or Ambazonia. Remember that parties to a conflict, it's like taking a horse to water. You can't make it drink. It has to come willingly. Look at France. Again, we have to all be clear what's clearly on the table for us to appreciate and therefore engage correctly. France is a member of EU. By extension, France is party or on record endorsing the Swiss-led process. As far as I understand, the country France has not come out to either negate the Swiss-led process or to categorically state it is not taking part. Now, if you go back to the Grand National Dialogue as a premise, you have to understand that the Republic of Cameroon, La République du Cameroun, would like to normalize the current happenings in Cameroon, and by extension, France, for the obvious reasons. They have interest in France, and Cameroon is essentially an extension of the country. So I don't see a scenario under which France would not be on record endorsing the Grand National Dialogue. However, I'm not sure that we have seen anything on record from France stating or indicating that they do not support this process. We have to be conscious of the fact that during the last Security Council outing, France essentially abstained, and is being called out by that action because it speaks volumes. The fact that they were
and
silent.
that's the point I'm trying to make here.
Exactly, they're silent on it, and that's telling. And it is for us Southern Cameroonians to name them and shame them, because while the rest of the world is calling out the atrocities by La République du Cameroun, human violation, it is unconscionable that a country at the level of a member of the UN Security Council, whose charter is to guarantee peace around the world and to intervene when life, liberty, and the freedoms of people are at stake, that when the question of the crisis in Southern Cameroon and La République du Cameroon, the country France is silent. As a matter of fact, the letter I just shared with you today from the Friends of France and Quebec, addressed to the French ambassador to the United Nations, precisely names them out and calls them out as to their silence in the face of this Rwanda genocide in the making scenario currently in our country, Southern Cameroon. So I would say that as long as Southern Cameroonians continue what they're doing, getting the international bodies to not relent efforts to bring La République to the table for negotiations, I don't believe that France will not come along and endorse what everybody else believes is path to sustainable, permanent, and lasting peace in the area. So that's my short.
Let me pose this question to both Ghana and Bo. They can add any other thing to what you have said. But you are talking about the French endorsing the end result of the negotiation. What if they hinder and stop the negotiation, allow any of them to take charge? Ghana, go ahead, please.
I don't think France can hinder negotiations as it pertains to Ambazonia, because Ambazonia is not Ivory Coast, Ambazonia is not Mali, Ambazonia is not Congo. Ambazonia was never French territory. We also have to do our part, us as Ambazonians, to continue to educate the world, to continue to educate US senators and legislators that France is misleading the world as it comes to Ambazonia. We have to remind the world that France misled the United States when it came to Vietnam, and misled the United States that into a conflict that the US did not that the US shouldn't have been there. We have to remind the world, if you examine it closely, that France misled the United States and the rest of the world into the conflict in Libya that is leading to so much catastrophe and so many deaths. We have to remind the world that in Ivory Coast, and there was a US senator in 2011 who came out and said that France misled the world by subverting the democratic process there in the Ivory Coast. So we have to do our job in sensitizing the world, whether we are talking about parliamentarians in England, in South Africa, in Germany, all over the world. We have to step up our sensitization campaign. You are there in Houston. There's a French consulate in Houston. There's a French consulate in Chicago, in DC, all over. Mr. Bo Herbert led a very, very useful rally against the French embassy in Washington. We have to up our game in exposing, and as Dr. Emma has said, shaming the French. And we are already doing a lot to push our case past the French. Last year in May, in the Arias Forum at the UN, the vote there was 10 against 4, with China abstaining. So even with French abstinence, if we keep doing what we're doing, we will lead our efforts to the freedom of Ambazonia despite French hindrance. Mr. Bo, you might want to chime in there.
Yes, Bo, please.
Yeah, I'm going to come in. Just to say first that this is a very serious question, and I want Ambazonians to understand what's going on. The French and La République du Cameroun are twins. They are father and son.
Right.
Mr. Biya famously says that he is the best pupil of the French president. So we want the French and Cameroon at the table facing Ambazonia. Cameroon is not an adult country to negotiate. They got a pseudo-independence. They have no right to decide anything. The French are still in charge. So we want them at the table. We don't want them endorsing anything. They are party to this conflict, and they should not fool around. They should not try to hide, because they're too big to hide. These are a people, the only people in Europe today who continue to inflict this crime against humanity called colonization against millions, hundreds of millions of Africans. These are the same people who slaughtered 1 million Algerians because they wanted independence. They slaughtered 600,000 Madagascans because they wanted independence. 700,000 Bamileke and Bassa people because they wanted independence. The same people who continue today to submit our people to economics and financial slavery through a currency that has no value, that they themselves do not accept, and that they manage to keep afloat because they have worked the international system to a point where they have their point person at the International Monetary Fund forever. This is a country that needs serious tackling when next year the world reconsiders whether the world was decolonized, whether African countries were decolonized. The French are the same people who are going around lobbying right now to make sure that they can provide support to La République du Cameroun to get loans and grants, who are sneaking in the back and trying to provide them with the soft grants, with the non-refundable grants that they need for reconstruction of Ambazonia. They have no right to do any business in Ambazonia. Absolutely no right, and they are party to this conflict, and they need to come to the table. I hope there's a session before the French Parliament tomorrow, and I know that French parliamentarian will be giving an earful to the President Emmanuel Macron, including on the issues of Ambazonia. And we encourage French parliamentarians to tell him the truth, because this man is ruining your country. If you ever said your country is the country of human rights, you have never ever lived up to that expectation.
Do you think that the French are any different from their president? I mean, it's a matter of policy of years to years. Do you think, because you are appealing to the French and their parliamentarians, are they any different from their leaders?
Well, look, parliamentarians are who they are. They have a possibility to call government to book. And so we are not going to give up on people who have a small chance of pushing our agenda. By the way, the French know that they were struggling in the back to try and offer money to support the Swiss-led process. It was rejected, rightly so. The French should not sponsor anything about the Swiss-led process.
To whom were the French giving money from the back?
Oh yeah, they know what I'm talking about. The French know what I'm talking about. They also know that they had to switch out the ambassador in Cameroon. The current ambassador, Christophe Giroux, moved in there with an agenda to take out the warlord who was the former ambassador, who was funding everything. They're doing everything by the textbook of Rwanda, perpetrating a genocide like they did in Rwanda, and they need to be shamed.
So yeah, I will go back to the question for all of you. What should we Ambazonians be doing to counter everything that the French are doing? We see them, for example, training so-called peace ambassadors for Ambazonia when the war is still going on. We see them putting money in the pockets of NGOs to go out and carry out peace lectures everywhere in Ambazonia. What should Ambazonians be doing to counter what the French are doing?
Chris, this is Emma. Let me venture an answer there. I think my co-panelist here can come up with some really sound solutions. I don't want to use creative solutions because I'm on record as saying La République is known for its creative solutions to solve problems just so that it doesn't address the actual problem at hand. One thing that we can be doing is what we are doing here on this platform, which is communicating amongst ourselves, sharing information, getting everybody on board with the fact that we are not a captured people. We weren't colonized, we weren't captured at war. We are essentially living in a country where we are considered second class, to say the French word, and that our rights are being trampled upon, and that what we are asking is right, correct, and the truth. It's based on legalities, it's historically correct, and we need not go in as beggars, even though we are the weaker party. But that as long as we make the international community as well as La République know that the non-negotiables and that we are peaceful, pragmatic, peace-loving people, I repeat that, seeking a permanent, lasting solution, but we don't want war, but we shall defend ourselves if war is declared on us. The second thing that we can do, and I believe that we are trying to do that, is to let our brothers and sisters know who today call themselves representatives in a government for which the people have soundly and categorically rejected participation in, is to continue to tell them that they don't represent the people on the ground. They have no constituencies. Therefore, every action that they participate in only goes to legitimize a government that has taken arms, causing mayhem on people who were essentially peaceful, seeking just the resolution of problems that they themselves know are the problem, because they are on record the words of their own president saying exactly what their crime is. This is the best case for any lawyer. My good friend here on the panel, lawyer here, will tell you that if La République were the defendant, he would be quite happy to take the case for the plaintiff, because he knows that he's going to get judgment in favor for his side. So these are simple things. We need to continue to hold our ground, because as truth as is a legal, physically correct and treatment. Extend that we still have parliamentarians, to the extent that we still have people participating in this creation of solutions to problems that do exist, mind you, but as the symptoms, only such that they abstain from addressing the root problems is part of the problems that we face. Now, I want to say that the parliamentarians essentially are giving Biya cover, legitimacy to Biya, and as long as our people are rejecting that and going roundly to the table to say they reject that, is the extent to which we can do this. And I'd like to hear my other panelists here have possible solutions. But one last thing, it is about getting to the negotiation table, and we have to continue to let the world know that we are the pragmatic party to this conflict, and we are willing, ready, and engage in seeking lasting solution through dialogue and negotiations.
All right, Comrade Ghana, again, I go back to that question. What should somebody on ground zero be doing to counter what the French are doing? What should those in the diaspora be doing to counter what the French are doing? I know you mentioned about rallies and stuff, but let's get to some other, for somebody on ground zero, what should they be doing?
Yes, there's one part of our history that can immensely inform us about what people on ground zero can be doing to counter what the French are doing. And we have to remember that the only way somebody, an oppressor, gets to govern the oppressed more often than not is through the consent of the oppressed. We have to look at a critical juncture of the history of the Southern Cameroons and look at when we bolted out of the Eastern House of Assembly in Nigeria. When our representatives in the Eastern House of Assembly, because of denial of being indirectly governed from Nigeria, walked out. That was in 1953. And that led to our self-government in Boya, cementing our independent status. And we have to inform our parliamentarians, our senators, that on September 22nd of 2017, our people unambiguously, unanimously demonstrated that we do not want to be governed through La République, that we do not want our parliamentarians representing Ambazonia in the parliament in LRC. They demonstrated our independence, but we still have parliamentarians who are still representing us in Yaoundé, and people still daring the wrath and the will of the people to register themselves on list to be elected as parliamentarians. Parliamentarians representing who? Our sisters and mothers have been raped. We have over 300 villages that have been burnt. We have over 13,000 Ambazonian civilians that have been innocently slaughtered. Mami Api, a lot of them were burnt live in their homes. Hospitals have been burnt. All of these monstrous casualties, and we still have parliamentarians daring to go look for a few francs or call it their own 33 pieces of silver to betray the people. The people have denied the consent of LRC to have any governance over them. Last night or a few hours ago, the home of Mbandam, Honorable Mbandam, was burned down to ashes in Batibo. A few hours ago, my own classmate in caste, Frederick Tanjo, the mayor of Batibo, sent a letter out withdrawing himself from the list of the SDF that he was put on. We've seen examples of other parliamentarians in Ambazonia saying, not now, not ever will they be on a list system associating themselves with LRC. LRC has no international legitimacy to govern us. It is a betrayal for our parliamentarians to put their names on any list for the February 9th election or any elections that are coming up in the future. So we must send a strong message and continue to deliver action towards our parliamentarians that we do not want to be governed by LRC, and putting your name on any list is putting yourself in jeopardy. But also, we must organize these demonstrations that we're talking about, shame and name them. We must continue to lobby, whether it's the US Senate, the US Congress, the US State Department, and remind them of how much France is spitting in the face of the United States by going contrary to UN resolutions that legitimately state Ambazonia as an independent entity. So those are some of the things that we can be doing, both us in the diaspora and people on the ground.
Comrade Bo,
and also,
do
just
you have
one more
anything?
thing. Just one more thing. The right to self-defense is an international right shrouded in international law. If you go to statutory law, if you go to common law, in any jurisdiction in the world, your home is your castle. Ambazonia is the castle of Ambazonians. It is our right to pick up arms and defend ourselves from marauding, monstrous RRC troops supported by France who are slaughtering our people. We must own our right and privilege to fund the troops on the ground. That is another aspect that we can do to counter what France is doing in slaughtering our people.
All right. Comrade Bo, do you have anything to add there before we move to a different question?
Yeah, let me just add a few points here. Number one, I think the French taught us what to do. The French, when they faced Nazi occupation, anybody who became a collabo, those we call enablers today in Ambazonia, anybody who did that faced certain consequences in France. We should read their own history. They should teach us by their own example what our people must do. In France, under Nazi occupation, those who were fighting to take over France, to return their country to the French people, including de Gaulle, who had to flee into exile in London, they did not tolerate people who were collaborating with the colonizers, with the conquerors, and with the occupiers. So the French have taught us what to do, what we need to do, what we must do, because we need to survive as a people. This is not offensive, this is not aggression, this is defense that our people are playing. And so exactly, people like Mbandam, who notoriously supported the terrorism law, people like Mbandam who went to the parliament and who claimed that they had resigned because the people of Ambazonia had said so. These people are going to play all kinds of tricks on the people of Ambazonia. It is up to us to say to them, we will not tolerate it in our land. So those of us on ground zero, we have to push to make sure these elections don't happen. So it's point number one. We have to push. Number two, anything that is Cameroon administration is also French administration. They cannot collaborate with it in any way, and they cannot grant consent to it. They should not neglect the fact that what they're doing to businesses through ghost towns, we need to step up a boycott of French products and call our African colleagues, our American friends, our British friends to join us in a boycott of French products, including their things. And we need to join a major campaign that opens in February to crash the CFA currency, to make a run on the banks and close that colonial currency. We need to be party to that process. Those of our brothers and sisters who are in France.
If I may stop you a little bit there, Comrade Bo, if you close the currency, I know lots of people have advocated for a currency for our people on ground zero, but what prospects do we have for a new currency for our people on ground zero if you close the CFA francs?
The CFA franc is not a currency, it's a piece of paper. In fact, it's worse than a piece of paper. People are running money today on mobile money. I can send money to my people by mobile money. So we have to absolutely, currency only works when they people accept
cash,
it. You need to reject it.
What do they do
they should take
with the mobile money?
Our people need to find a way of accepting the naira, accepting the dollar, and accepting other currencies and doing trade by barter. They need to bring that currency to the ground. And to
don't you think it is the responsibility of the leaders like you and others to figure out how that can be done? Because again, I have listened to many proposals about, hey, let's get rid of the franc CFA and use something, but I think they are waiting for leadership on how to proceed.
Yeah, because this is a 14-country deal. That is why February is so important, because February is an across-Africa deal by all Francophone countries to try and crash the CFA currency. So that is a campaign we need to lead. But in the international scene, for those of us who live abroad, we have to remember the 60 years enough for the World Bank and the IMF campaign, which was essentially about debt forgiveness. That campaign has never happened at international level to try and bring the CFA currency to a halt. This is a crime. Just this currency is a major crime against the people of Africa. This is enslavement. That's what's going on. And our people need to communicate that act of enslavement as an act of enslavement, not about the currency, because it is not. You cannot pay anything in France with a CFA franc. You cannot exchange it in the French central bank, but they issue it to you. You cannot repay your loans to the French in the CFA currency. You cannot repay unless you want to keep the money at the central bank in Yaoundé at the Biya'S. You cannot repay, for instance, the World Bank on the IMF with the CFA. You cannot.
Now,
so this is not
if I may ask, and I will pose this question to all of you, there's West African states are adopting a new currency, the ACAS. And most Central African states, of course, including La République du Cameroon, isn't going to be part of that arrangement. Shouldn't we, Ambazonians, be looking at how we can be part of that arrangement? Using the ACAS, I will give the question to any of you can take the question.
We should be careful to do the from the fry pan to the fire thing. Mr. Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, famously went to Nigeria, and if you remember what he said, it was, if Africans want to do away with this currency, we will do away with it. Of course, he didn't mean it. Exactly as he does not mean it now when he's saying to 5 African heads of states, please come to France and tell me whether you want French troops. Our people have said, we don't want you. We don't want your troops. We don't want your money. We don't want your funding. We don't want anything. We want you out of our continent. So he knows what we don't want. But when he went to Nigeria, the deal was, how can we keep giant Nigeria with us? Remember, the French do everything with the blood of Africans. It took 6 million Biafrans for France to come away with the oil concessions in Nigeria and to be doing the biggest business with Nigeria today. But they are the ones who funded the rebellion. They are the ones who got Biafrans slaughtered.
Well, there is a movement up there today to get rid of the French. Dr. Emma, tell us what shouldn't...
here. Chris, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I was going to add here that my focus and all of our focus should be really on how we keep up this pressure that is currently mounting on La République to the point where they finally accept that war is not the right path to get to the solution that they want.
But don't you think that abducting for Ambazonia to adopt a new currency is part of that pressure?
You know, free people normally decide on what is right for them as a collective. Let's not try and burn down our opportunities here. Let's capitalize on this momentum and not let hubris drive us, because this is where we start following different paths and end up looting our efforts and never realizing anything. I will argue rather strongly that we maintain the campaign to keep the eyes of the international and their involvement concrete, real, and substantial in bringing resolution to our people. The currency issue for me, no disregard to my friend here, Tumfoy, on the issue of France CFA. We can have a whole show on this alone, and we'll never, we'll not put hours in the day. But my point is really simple. The international pressure is clear. It's mounting. The steady stream of high-level delegations to A2D is not to congratulate Paul Biya on his recent war declared on southern Cameroonian peaceful protesters. It is, I'm sure, by doors diplomaticals, as we've seen, that he can never, ever win this war and must in the Swiss-led process. That's where I would rather every Southern Cameroon Ambazonia peace-loving, tired and battered, to put their effort so that we can begin to engage as people who actually are convinced that negotiations only to settle here, rather than even worrying about what other countries do, what the monitoring is a country. As I said, free people normally and naturally arrive at solutions that are good for them At this point, we are just victims and a co-opted people into a French scheme. We never came from that tradition. It was imposed. Just this new name that they are calling us by specialists was imposed on us as one clear path for Paul Biya to eventually evade crimes against humanity. So he's creating new and ever creative instruments to keep the international community at bay. I would say that we focus to get La République to the table and ensure that the international community brings La République to understand that that's the clearest path piece at this moment.
All right. I'm a very strong believer that you cut off the French franc CFA from our territory. You send a very strong message to both La République and, of course, the French that we mean business and that we have gone. You seem to disagree a little bit with that, but Comrade Ghana, let me give you just 1 minute, please. Do a response to that, and let's move to the subject of the special status.
As an economist, the definition of money is that money is what money does. And when you start formulating monetary policy, and by the way, I agree that withdrawing ourselves from that French franc for the reasons that have been so eloquently stated by both Comrade Bo and Dr. Osong, that we need to rightfully withdraw ourselves. But I think we have a lot of, we have some good leadership forums, be it the IG, be it Morris and other organizations, that we can liaison and properly plan on how to get ourselves out of the franc CFA. Again, money is what money does, because of our dependence on it for about 60 years. It is still serving a purpose which we can, with good planning and coming up with a solid blueprint, we can win our people away. I mean, there are a lot of dollars out there, and there are a lot of denominations within the dollar that we can replace the CFA with dollars and have our people start using the dollar as a currency. But
you need a lot of dollars.
Excuse me, Mark, just a minute. This is not a decision that can be made within an online forum. This is something that has to be planned behind the scenes by intelligent minds within calm deliberation.
All right. Great. Thank you for that. Let's move to the next subject
a practical example of something.
Yes, Comrade Bo.
I was just going to chip in a practical example of something. Look,
okay.
The dollar is not the official currency of Liberia. It is not the official currency of Nigeria, of Ghana. It is not the official currency of the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Right.
But this is the currency that is most in use in these three countries. If you wanted to buy roasted plantains near the port in Congo, Kinshasa, the woman there is going to want you to pay her in dollars, not in Congolese francs.
That's very correct.
It is just a matter of rejecting the CFA franc currency. You start slowly, we stick with it, and people will find out that thing, nobody wants to take it.
That's a great point. I have witnessed that in Liberia, they use mostly the US dollars. Congo Democratic Republic, the same thing goes on there. In fact, they're virtually getting rid of their own currency and adopting the dollars. But I think it is something that you, the leaders, should sit behind doors, closed doors, and really take a critical look at this and see how we can get that going on Ground Zero. I think Ground Zero will very much welcome that. All right, let's move to the so-called special status. I know this really doesn't concern us because La République du Cameroon is living in the illusion that we are still part of their country. But we have said La République du Cameroon has no legal right to tell Ambazonians what they should be. And we have seen that even within their ranks, they are rejecting this so-called special status. But the concern is with the help of the French, is it possible that they can push this thing to the extent where the Swiss initiative become needless and they implement their special status? I will give any of you the chance to go first.
If you don't mind me taking that first, I would start that by demonstrating something. You know, I want to give you $1 million from my palm, if you can see my palm right now.
I need it right
and I
here,
don't have
please.
it to give to you. There is no way I can give you $1 million now from my palm because I don't have it. La République du Cameroon cannot give to us what it does not have. They do not even have the special status from France to turn around and give us a special status. When South Africa was annexing Namibia, South Africa tried to give Namibia some sort of a special status. It didn't work because South Africa did not have that legitimacy to give Namibia a special status. Sam Nujoma led the rebellion, led the way, and Namibia got its independence close to 1989. Same thing with Gambia. When Gambia tried to legitimately tie itself up with Senegal and it didn't work, Senegal did not turn around and say, we are going to give you Gambia some sort of special status. The two parties parted ways, and today they are two independent countries like they were. La République du Cameroon and the Southern Cameroons are two separate entities in international law. Again, based on the Treaty of Versailles, UN Resolution 1514 XV, UN Resolution 1608. Any attempt to give Ambazonia, aka the Southern Cameroons, a special status are blind attempts to subvert, to circumvent, to undermine, and to trivialize these UN instruments, these UN resolutions and articles. You cannot do that. These UN resolutions are cemented in fact. Holding here in my hand is UN Resolution 1608 XV that expressly defines the independent status of the Southern Cameroons. On April 21st, 1961, the UN voted for the independence of the Southern Cameroons. It was in a sub-paragraph that they voted for us to get independence through association with La République du Cameroon. The United States abstained from that vote. So even in 1961, the United States had already seen that this was going to lead to problems. The US representative to the United Nations, Congressman Zabloki, protested against any independence for the Southern Cameroons through association with LRC. We have seen the result. 13,000 people killed, over 300 villages burned. So La République du Cameroon cannot, will not, and will never be able to give us a special status. If you read through the special status, it's a joke. I have said it before. It's like toilet paper. It's not even worth toilet paper because toilet paper has some use. We need to flush it back to where it came from. If you look at the unintelligent way in which they wrote the special status, you're making the head of an executive at the same time the head of the constitutional or legislative council. It will not work. The La République du Cameroon is spending millions and millions lobbying foreign lobby firms to tell lies about Ambazonia. They could use part of that money, if they were earnest about creating a federation in Cameroon, to go to South Africa, KwaZulu Natal, the Free States. They could teach them how a state formation exists within a country in liaison with the federal government. They could go to Germany and learn about how independent states are formed. The United States provides a great example how you have separation of powers between the state and the federal government. So no, that special status will never be accepted by our people, and we remain with the quest for the independence of Ambazonia today, tomorrow, and forever.
All right. This so-called special status was supposedly adopted from the Canadian example with Quebec and mainland Canada. Bo, what they have prescribed in their special status, is that what obtained in Canada?
First, comrade, I would say I'm not an expert on Canada issues. I've visited frequently and I know the country a little bit. I could proudly say that it is a total misrepresentation of what Canada is. First, Canada recognized the nation of Quebec at the insistence of France, okay? On the one hand, France is insisting for the nation of Quebec to be recognized, and they're insisting for the nation of Ambazonia never to be recognized. So it's ridiculous. Now, the reason we're discussing this thing is to do what my brother Ngana just did a moment ago. This thing is supposed to go to the latrine, not, you know, I want to use that word instead of the toilet, because I believe that there's just a little level lower when you go to the latrine. That's where it's supposed to go. This is not even supposed to be contemplated by the people of Ambazonia, and I'll tell you why. It is not even a bill. It is not a piece of legislation. When it downloaded on my computer into a Word file, it was 152 pages big. When I finished reading it, which was an exercise in torture, okay, just to read it. But when I finished reading it, it had I went back and underlined, it had 118 places where it refers to some other law that will be decided by the President of the Republic, by the Prime Minister,
Right.
by the Minister in charge of local government. It is nonsense. Nowhere on earth do you put in place a law like that. A law that says, in essence, there's no reference to a she in that law. It's absolutely none.
You have always supported the idea
his.
of the House of Chiefs. They are giving us back the House of Chiefs.
Well, look, the House of Chiefs that they conceived, you know what will happen to the chiefs? The chief is going to be the vice president of some councilor that the CPDM is going to pick. They are crazy. Okay, and then they have a ridiculous number. We are going to find 20 of them. Based on what? And then everybody else is a criminal, except a certain president of the republic, the representatives of the president of the republic, and two nincompoops that he intends to appoint to take charge. Because when everything is done, people are elected, he is then going to appoint a secretary general from the presidency who will manage everything. That is what the bill says. And then they will appoint what they call a public independent conciliator, whose business is to ruin everything. And they do more. If you start any business, any industry, they will own 30%, kind of as of a right. This is communism reborn. This man used to call his book Liberalismo Communautaire. He meant communism by beer. This guy needs to be, you know, he needs to go back to Siberia, wherever he's coming, but he's from some archaic world. He's gone to the point where he's probably going to tell you who you can marry, so that you can be authentically indigenous. I don't know, you can be a native. This guy is crazy.
Let me go to Dr. Emma. Dr. Emma, I doubt if you have read read that bill, but you look at that bill. You look at that bill. You see, they said they have taken away the post of government delegates. But what they have done is just change the title. The government delegate is still there. Now, they also said they have dealt away with the position of the same government delegate, but they have a government delegate who is supervising all the other mayors. Guess who is going to have the final say on every decision that the council takes? It is that secretary. So tell Ambazonians, educate Ambazonians. Is there any difference from what they already have? I mean, they are still going to appoint the DOs, as the DOs are still there. The governors are still there. The people cannot even elect their governors. I mean, this is just playing the devil's advocate, because we know this has nothing to do with our revolution anyways. But tell the people, is there any change in what they are giving them?
You know, as you're speaking, Secretary Chris, I can't help laughing. I listened to my brother 2.0 and I'm like, okay, let's let the constitutional experts deal with this. there is a saying that when the Titanic is sinking, you don't go and arrange the chairs on the deck. This is what comes to mind when I think about this bill and what La République is doing. I don't even want to spend the time and that of your audience in trying to direct, analyze, and make sense of who is in charge of what and how this bill is being proposed. First and foremost, let's just accept that this is an exercise because we are here now on television and it's the current event of the day and somehow impacts Southern Cameroonians by extension, and therefore we have to discuss it. Beyond that, I think I'm definitely in the same vein as Tumfoin and my brother Valentine here, that this thing has a place and it's not on the table to talk about. Let's look at it this way. We need to rather tell Southern Cameroonians, Ambazonians, that they seem to be in this place. And I'm sidestepping your question here, Chris, for a purpose, because I want to make a point. That we are the only people in the world whose position is forever regressing. Have you watched the movie, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button? This guy grows up to be an adult and somehow regresses progressively to a baby. So the curious case of Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia, in the eyes of La République, is that's a metaphor for it. So as people, we are supposed to consistently self-actualize. We are consistently devolving to the point where we are this case of a special status. Now, with that in mind, let's tell our audience what spatial status is not. This is not home rule, where you are a democratic government with a constitution that structures in place that make sense, as you have just explained in your outing there. There are no clear divisions of power. Now, the question that we need to be asking, and ask really simple, assuming that we are having this exercise, is, can La République show us what powers they reserve for themselves? And when Ambazonians and Southern Cameroonians take a look at all the powers still in the hands of La République, then I believe we have an understanding how they still remain a captive people, so to speak, where instead, as Lawyer Ngana has said, that their rights are enshrined legally. Rights have been inherited historically. They are now being devolved and power is given to them in such limited fashion. So that is what this bill is not. It doesn't even begin to address the issue of autonomy, because special status, as stated in this piece of paper, is far from that of anything close to being autonomous, which might, just might, begin to calm the tempers in the area. Now, if we want to really talk about, and I must admit, reading a document like this for 15 minutes it takes, or 20 minutes through 100 and something pages, doesn't make me an expert. But we can all agree this is yet another instrument by La République, the President, to asphyxiate, to annex, and to continue to subjugate, because there is no transfer of power, as Tumfoin has pointed, whereby somebody sits from Yaoundé over whoever you have duly elected. And let me just make one point here for us to all appreciate, because it's really important and speaks to where La République wants us to stay permanently. As the National Party have so far been fighting to take a sharing, and we are unable to, is now reduced to a so-called special status pie. La République is ensuring that we devolve into tribalism, where we are fighting for ever diminutive share of what should rightly be ours. And this should be soundly rejected. and thrown out the door. This is simply another way that President Biya, I want your audience, all of us, to appreciate this, that in complicity with our brothers and sisters who say they represent us, meanwhile they are killing us, to be continue to normalize what's happening in southern Ambazonia, give us the word that he has an internal issue dealing with a minority population. And oh, by the way, don't play in my sandbox because I'm not playing in yours. And every has its minority concerns, and I don't need your help to take care of it, except when you're giving me foreign aid. That is what Biya is doing with this innovative solution to a problem that he wishes not to solve, is to normalize. I want the audience to understand this as they engage, especially those who are doing so at the barrel of the gun, who sometimes voices cannot be heard, that this is just yet one way to avoid being called up for crimes against humanity, and to normalize and give the world a sense that this is a problem dealing with a minority group, and therefore internal solutions.
Comrade Ghana, I'm coming to you, but you can add your point to this question. This conflict began over lawyers demanding that French judges, and of course teachers, demanding also that French teachers be taken out of our classrooms, and judges, French judges and attorney generals and court clerks be taken out of the courts in the southern Cameroons. This so-called bilingualism legislation that they passed the other day just goes back and reinstitute exactly what these lawyers did not want to see. What should the lawyers in Ambazonia be doing today?
Comrade, it was coincidental that I happened to have been in Bamenda in March of 2015, and in March of
I think we lost the connection there. In Tunfon, you want to go ahead and fill in there, that would be great. What do you think the lawyers should be doing?
I think the lawyers just went back to the future because the lawyers were among the people that took the people to the streets. And when the people were in the streets, they left them right out there and went back, kind of, you know, realizing the prediction of a certain minister of justice or of injustice who had said they will get hungry and they will go back to the court. Now, you will not fix your situation, as Bob Marley says, you fight for freedom, you run, you're going to fight again. Our people cannot run away to come back and fight another day. But just to say something additional about this legislation, because it is out of the extraordinarily. This is not normalizing the situation. This is worse than before. If anybody thought that Ambazonia was colonized before, this bill finally puts a nail on the coffin. This bill are the papers of surrender that they are serving to the people of Ambazonia. You are negotiating a way which is for these people who think that federalism can work, that decentralization can work. They are negotiating away rights that we have by way of international law and by way of UN resolutions that are non-negotiable and that cannot be dissolved by national law. By the way, the law doesn't say whether it is, in fact, it uses all the words. It uses decentralization, it uses regionalization, it uses devolving powers. One thing it doesn't say autonomy anywhere on that piece of paper. So this is a piece of document meant initially, this is La République waving the white flag of surrender, telling the international community, we have been beaten by the people of Ambazonia and now we must give them what they wanted. But they're telling the people of the world at the same time, that what they wanted were some trade union demands by teachers and lawyers, and that it was about English and about who goes to the law court and who gets appointed to the law courts. No, it is not. This is an issue, this is an identity crisis, this is a territorial war, this is an annexation war, this is an end to a crime against humanity that the people of Ambazonia are determined to put away. Even if they were to end up putting English-speaking, and I mean Ambazonian lawyers and judges in courts in Ambazonia, there will still be an aspect of international law that has been adopted under the francophonization of our territory that will need to be repealed. That piece of legislation which led to the killings at the beginning is called the Ohada Law. And the Ohada Law means that for every business law, every business conflict, you must go to a court in Abidjan, a French court in Abidjan, to do the matter under French law, Napoleonic law. The people of Ambazonia who have nothing to do with France and Napoleonic law will have to settle business disputes in a French court in Abidjan. Completely unacceptable.
All right, Dr.
Let me add one more thing here, if I may.
Yes, please.
Let me add one more thing here. I think we have to ask the question. You are currently in the throes of war. You are introducing bill to change the entire character of a region, and you're conducting regional municipal elections. Is President Biya asking the people of Southern Cameroon to go to the polls to vote for special status, or to go to the poll and vote for status quo? These are the kinds of absurdities that baffles the mind, and a problem that we could be prosecuting single-handedly. We are getting all these obstacles from someone who clearly does not want to solve the problem. Because who in their right mind is currently prosecuting a war on the people that they are introducing a bill to change what it is that they are? We have been called so many things that it's almost, we could write books about that. So the question that we have to be asking ourselves is, there is no situation, given what we are facing, whether it's the use of French language, whether it's our public service, whether it's our legal system, where we, the minority 25%, in this greater part called Cameroon, will ever prevail. Just no way. So it stands to reason that Yaoundé clearly is not in the a peacemaking business or solution-seeking business. They continuously want to assert dominance over a people they never declared at war, and they continuously want to insist that this type of violence is a solution. And I think resoundingly rejected it, and they need to come to terms with that we need to talk about this and settle it without further loss of life. Oh, so, right. And let our viewers out there Google the newest nation in the world called Bougainville, yes, and read their path to independence today. They are supposed to be the 194th country in the world, or the 196th, depending on who's counting, of the world. And of last week, just voted in a referendum to become the newest nation in the world. And when you read their path to getting here, it started and ended on the table.
All right. Thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, we have technical issues connecting Comrade Valentine, and so we may have to continue without him. However, we have just about 14 minutes to go, and I thought to open the lines to our audience to be able to ask a question or make a comment. And so I have the first caller here. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, sir. You are on ABC Amber Live.
Okay. Good evening, Secretary Chris.
Good evening, sir. May we know where you're calling in from, please?
calling here in the U.S., United States of America.
All right, and what's the question?
Sorry, you are breaking up.
What is the contribution?
No, I was calling you on a private conversation that I wanted to have with you. I don't think I will go on air now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't realize that. All right, that will be later then. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have Comrade Ghana back with us, and I know you was making a point when we got cut off, and I will give him, please, 1 minute, so we can quickly round this up. I give you 1 minute to go back to your line of thought, please.
Yes, just to state that, and I want to read this Article 5 of UN Resolution 1608. It states that invites the administering authority, which is Britain in this case, the government of the Southern Cameroons and the Republic of Cameroon, French Cameroon in this case, to initiate urgent discussions with a view to finalizing before October 1st, 1961, the arrangements by which the agreed and declared policies of the parties concerned will be implemented. Everything that French Cameroon has done since 1961 is to subvert this article in 1608. So 1608 was never implemented. Therefore, we do not have a treaty of union. If you read the biography of the Frenchman who supervised Cameroon's transition into annexation of the Southern Cameroons, the Gaullist Frenchman Pierre Mesmer, in his book titled Le Blanc Sang Vent, he says, sauf en apparence une annexation, my French is not that good, which means, but for in appearance, it was an annexation by LRC of the Southern Cameroons. So this special status that we are talking about are the continuous attempts to circumvent UN Resolution 1608 as it applies to Ambazonia. It will not work. As Mr. Bo Herbert knows, the international community, the UN, the United States, the European Union, Canada, all of those nations and institutions have pointed Mr. Biya to the Swiss-led initiative to negotiate the end of this conflict. This aberration of the special status that they are talking about will not subvert or thwart the will of 1608 that granted the independence of Ambazonia.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you. I will now go to our first caller to take the first contribution. Hello, sir.
Hello, good evening, Secretary Chris.
Good evening, sir. May we know where you're calling in from, please?
I am Pete. I'm calling from Germany.
Okay, and what is the contribution?
Yeah, my little contribution is just that I've listened to the panelists and tears are running down my ears, my eyes. The problem with Ambazonia today is simply the problem of the parliamentarians. I think just like one of your panelists said, we left Enugu in peace. If we should look for a method to put these CPDM and SDF parliamentarians on the book, we are getting independence the next day. They should leave that parliament by hook or by crook. And one of the panelists just said, we should not go in because the international community will say we are terrorists. And this is time past that word terrorism. We should bring those parliamentarians to book by any means, even if it means openly attacking them. We should make them leave that parliament. Then on the point of we should go out of the frames of CFA. This is very important. And Comrade Boo said it is a little bit complicated. Yeah, it's complicated. But I want to make you to understand that if you go today in Victoria, you go to a bar in an off license with a $50 or a $50 or a 50 euro with 50 euros in a bar, in a nightclub, They change that money and give you CFA. So what can we do? If we stand firm that you send money by Western Union and the person goes to the bank and says, I want dollars or I want euros. That money, if 10, 15, 20 people go to that bank and ask for euros or dollars, the bank will now look for a means to start stocking those bills of euros or dollars. Most of our business dealings are with Nigeria. If you go to Onitsha market with euros or with dollars to buy, to bring back to Ambazonia, they will readily accept euros or dollars in Onitsha market or even at Ecom. So please, our problem here is those parliamentarians. Let's look for a way, even if it is by war, to wage a war on those parliamentarians to get out and come back to Ambazonia. We will be safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the call. I will let any of you take, it was essentially a comment, but if any of you want to say something, that would be great.
Let me chime in on what the gentleman just said. I think if everybody agrees that the father of the Ambazonian revolution is His Royal Highness Fongoji Dinka. And when Fongoji Dinka went to the UN to protest our status and to reclaim our independence, what they told Fongoji Dinka is that there is nothing on the books at the UN that ties the Southern Cameroons to La République du Cameroon. The only thing that is giving La République some semblance of legitimacy in its presence is Ambazonians are your parliamentarians attending their parliament. So the caller is absolutely, unambiguously and unequivocally right. Our parliamentarians need to leave that house, and no Ambazonian who is worth its salt needs to put their name on any list. And as Comrade Bo Herbert said, we need to learn from France. Those French men who betrayed France and collaborated with Hitler, we know how France treated them. So let's learn from France.
Let's try to make our answers a little shorter now so that we can take quite a handful of calls.
Can I just add something here? Let me add something
briefly,
here
please,
to the caller's question very quickly.
Yes.
I'd like to ask the caller that would he sign a petition if one is circulated to recall all those parliamentarians so that time has passed? Because they should.
I think that's a great suggestion, most especially for Ground Zero.
If we put out a petition out there to garner 100,000 signatures and recall every one of those parliamentarians, would he sign it? So sometimes what we wish in our hearts, we must follow through with actions, because I truly believe that if we had voted with our hearts and hands, none of them would have the legitimacy, even though they have lost the legitimacy of stating that they do represent us in Yaoundé.
All right, thank you. Thank you. I will take the next question or comment, and I think Comrade Bo would come in there. Hello, sir.
Secretary Chris.
Hello, good evening, sir. May I know where you're calling in from, please?
I'm calling from Canada.
Okay. What's the contribution?
My contribution is I want to thank the panelists for the deliberation today. It was really wonderful and very thoughtful to our people. Yeah, like all of us have agreed on one thing, but we have not really laid down a plan on how we have to deal with the parliamentarians, because
you can understand we don't have to lay down the plan on television, correct?
Okay, yeah. So, like, I can see we have been so lenient with them. Look at the last time when Frundi came online on ABC. He was just trying to like test the water and see what we can do or what the people are ready to do. Like the other people came there and said, we are not really ready for this independent, because some of them are taking us for a joke. Meanwhile, our people are dying. We should not let them do this again going forward.
All right.
The parliamentarians, mayors, Jews and whatsoever in Ambazonia. We need to get rid of them in any means possible. And we have to put that in action, not only in talking. Another point also that I want you guys to deliberate on is that the UN security representative of Central Africa, Mr. Ford, once you listened to him last time he was presenting the case on what, he was just endorsing the special statute. That is the same system that we have to call Mr. Francois Ford in Central Africa. He is not serving the UN, he is serving the interests of the French in that region. He was just endorsing the special statute, like what they need to solve the problem now is to implement the resolution.
All right.
Which all of us
all right. All right, I think I get your point. I will let our panel to deliberate on that. But in 2 points, I think he raised a very, very pertinent point with that UN Central African Secretary General. This guy basically was painting the French Cameroon narrative at the Security Council. What can we do? What can be done? And besides, the parliamentarians, everybody is saying they need to withdraw. Is there any other thing we can do other than what has been done?
A number of points here. In 2017, we had a recall vote. There's no parliamentarian representing Ambazonia. Please, we should stop bothering about these people. John Gute does not represent us. You know, Agbonkongo does not represent us. So why are we bothered about people who are representing themselves? These people don't represent us. We have to be very clear about it. And there was a recall vote. They are just as illegitimate as the SDOs that Mr. Biya appoints. These are all people that get appointed by a rigged electoral system. So we need to focus on doing what Bougainville just did. When they referred to the vote in Bougainville, it is a non-binding referendum. We are going back to where we started this revolution, where we said, conduct a vote to tell the people of Ambazonia to line up behind their government, so that that government becomes their representatives. That is how you shut down this system. That vote by Bougainville is non-binding. It was organized by the people for their own benefit. There will still be another referendum, super potentially by the United Nations, that will lead to actual independence. But in order to make their case clear, they put out 98% of their people voting to break away from Papua New Guinea. We need to do our business on our own and let these people who have already joined the one and indivisible not confuse us. Agbonkongo is not one of us. He is one of La République. Frundi is not one of us. He is one of La République. They are welcome to join La République and to join their delegation to the negotiations. They are not Ambazonians. They have renounced their nationality. These people don't belong with us.
All right.
And no matter how many times they get rigged into votes, into positions in parliament, they do not represent the people of Ambazonia, and we should behave in that way.
All right. Let me take one more caller before we go. Hello, sir.
Hello, Secretary Chris. This is UN calling from Los Angeles.
You mean the United Nations?
yeah. UN the activists.
Oh, okay, the activists. All right. Go ahead, please.
I want to thank the leaders for the powerful acting of today. They have done a great deal to educate our parliamentarians. And I just need them, what advice can these our leaders give collectively to those Ambazonians who have turned their fight against Ambazonia instead of fighting La République? Can they give them some advice that the enemy we have in this revolution is La République, not Amazonians? Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the question. Ladies and gentlemen, please be brief with your answers, all of you. Just very brief.
Let me take this one. I think, UN, thank you for that very, very important question. You stated the question, you answered the question. We doubt, and we inside have to consolidate our positions. There is something to be said about collaborating having coherence, and that coming together is not necessarily seeking uniformity, because as you all understand, even siblings from the same mothers still have some differences, but they consolidate ranks, the close ranks, when they're dealing with a common enemy. That is clear. La Republica, brothers of La Republica and sisters, are not our enemies in the physical. Their policies and aggression towards us at this point makes them enemies, and we shall defend ourselves against them. So what do? You come together and face that enemy as a collective for a singular collective goal that transcends personalities, that transcends strong group identification, knowing that we, this generation, the younger generation, cannot, for God's sake, pass this tragic moment to the next generation to deal with. Our forefathers tried. For some reason, God made it such that the rise and explosion of this into war being declared on us is happening during our time. It would be a travesty and a complete failure, for posterity would judge us harshly if, because of our division, our strong mind, strong man mentality, it must be my way or the highway. If I did not bring the initiative, I will not support it. So hard mentality. If I don't have my posses line up behind me and singing my praises, I will not join somebody else's initiative. I will not lend my support morally or otherwise to something that is not part of my group. For God's sakes, my fellow Ambazonians, those on the ground, if you can hear my voice, do not allow this to make suffering longer. Most of these leaders enjoy the comfort of distant shores. We share in your passion. We are sympathetic. We are not there facing the barrel of the gun, but you cannot allow our internal divisions to make you continuously face the gun. So you must push up and insist on collaborating.
All right.
As we said, and you've heard us said very quickly, Chris, it is about getting to a negotiated, permanent, lasting peace. For those who still believe there is some other process out there, all the international correspondence you've seen is pulling La République to facing the music. So why would we now sing to a different drummer? Let's sing to the drum beat that the international community and us have fought so long and hard, and more than an entire generation is at the risk of being annihilated. My dear fellow brothers and sisters, it cannot stay this way. We must come together. We are not talking about uniformity. We are talking about collaborating, communicating coherently, clearly around a collective higher goal. And then at a time, we can sort out.
All right. Thank you. Comrade Bo in Ghana, I'm going to take this last caller so you can then add all your comments and to the last caller, to this caller, and we will call it a day from there. So, please. Hello.
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 Thank you, sir. Thank you for this opportunity. I would like to ask...
where are you calling from, please?
Question. I'm calling from Swiss, sir. I'm calling from Swiss, Secretary Chris.
All right.
I would like to ask our comrade Bo Herbert. He's a lucky man, and he's sitting at the driver's seat in our independent drive bed. My question is this: I would like him to do more. He can keep his Maurice and still be part of our constitutional our council. What's just going out of my mind? He can become part of the IG without losing his identity as the leader of Maurice. Are you getting me, sir?
I'm getting you. I hope boy is getting you too.
Like the president, like our current president of the Christian mission, they cancel our constitutional council. I would like him to do more. I know we are lucky to have him, but
you think he's not? You think he's not doing enough right now?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Why can't he be part of that council? The same goes to Akangwa. You know,
which council are you referring to?
The constitutional council.
I guess you are referring to the Restoration Council.
Restoration Council.
You want him to be the Speaker of the House or what?
Yeah, I want him to do more. He should get into the bigger picture. You can keep your Morris and still be part of that. Same goes to Akangwa. Okay.
Akwanga, okay.
My last point is, my last point is, whenever there's confusion or disagreement, it shouldn't be taken to the social media. Because last time, Eric Tato was saying that Boo has abused a sitting president in a provocative way. So
all right, listen. All right, please listen. We're out of time. I wish we had called earlier, but I will allow Bo to respond to your appeal and your other question, and then I will give Comrade Ghana the last point. Thank you for calling, please. All right, Bo, it's your turn, please.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, and thanks to the callers. Thanks for the questions. Number one, I will flip that demand on everyone on the ground. Every one of us. There was a time in 2016, 2017 when every one of us was fired up, when every one of us was out there when they said, come out and demonstrate, when every one of us signed those petitions, when we joined together in a spirit of camaraderie that has disappeared. This is not the responsibility of any leader, be it me or anyone else. It is the responsibility of the Ambazonian people to realize that those who have now picked up guns at great risk, life and safety, have done so to add to what you were doing, not to substitute for what you were doing. And so you must be there. You must provide your own action. You must provide your own support. At my level, I can tell you, my brother, I don't sleep. I try to do everything. I work with everybody. I make it a point to make sure that I don't draw lines. But I also make it a big point to tell my brothers when we are doing the wrong thing, because I think that it is important for all of us to come together around what will bring us a solution. And it is a good point here for me to say that the international community in those last statements were indirectly, they did not write it in black and white, but anybody who did not see it is slightly blind, because what they were saying was that Team Ambazonia, which is now at the table in Switzerland with La République du Cameroon, it was not getting blamed. Ambazonia was not getting blamed for being absent. So this was recognition for Team Ambazonia as being present at the table. Anyone who is waiting for another process, who thinks they can crash this process, who have promised to crash this process, you are trying to crash Ambazonia. Please get on board. If this process is wrong, we will fix it together. My brother, I said that as an old man who is supposed to serve the fun of COM as a messenger and a spokesperson, I want to be able to go back to COM and help the kingdom of COM, one part of Ambazonia, to grow. Old people should not be in the middle of this government. They should be helping our people go forward. So that is what I would like to do. Thank you very much.
Okay, I will let Comrade Ghana make a contribution to those calls, and I will still give the last word to Emma. Comrade Ghana, please.
I just want to say that the journey since 1961 has been very trying and challenging. In 1961, we were deprived of having a treaty of union. 1966, political parties were intimidated and merged by Ahidjo. 1968, Honorable Ngom Babejua was overthrown as the Prime Minister of West Cameroon, unconstitutionally and illegally by Amadou Ahidjo. 1972, there was the fraudulent referendum. 1984, Paul Biya changed the name from United Republic of Cameroon, which was illegitimate, to Republic of Cameroon. 1984-85, Fongoji Dinka wrote the new social order, dissolved the time bomb. He was arrested, locked up, tortured in Kondogi, suffered a stroke and went into exile. Same 1985, yours truly here led the strikes to stop the changing of the GCE to the back. I was arrested, locked up for months at the gendarmerie at Old Town. All of us bear bronze. We've come a long way fighting.
Maybe I was actually locked up there with you in Old Town.
Okay, then
I was one of those picked up on that day and locked up in in Old Town.
Well, you were picked up on that day, but I wasn't picked up on that day. But 2 weeks later, after investigations, they came and arrested me in school, and I spent months there. But all of us, just like you, just like me, just like Dinka, just like Albert Mukong, just like Justice Ebong, have bear bronze of this struggle. There are a lot of people listening who've lost brothers, mothers, uncles. They say when the night is darkest, the dawn is near. As Comrade Bo articulated, we are now at the Swiss negotiations. We might just be at the stage of capacity building, but the international community has heard our cry. This is not time for us to relent. This is time for us to put more effort behind the struggle. Don't have an excuse of some misappropriation or some mistakes that happened in the past to take yourself from supporting the struggle. Whether it's Maurice, whether it's the interim government, whether they are the forces on the ground, find a way to support. Also support your local families back at home, your local churches, because they are the ones bearing the biggest brunt of this struggle. But a large reason why the international community is listening to us is because we are singing the claim of our stake to freedom through the barrel of the gun, through the barrel of AK-47s. Support the forces of the ground. Support county by county. Support your LGA areas. And by all means, don't brutalize your own brothers. It is wrong for Ambazonians to engage in atrocities against Ambazonians. Totally wrong.
All right.
Adhere to 1948 Geneva Conventions that respect the rights of war and respect human rights during times of war. The end is nearer than we think. As Comrade Bo said, 2 years, 3 years ago, we're all clamoring and joining hands. A lot of people have pulled back. This is not the time to pull back with your purse or with your efforts. And let's not be too critical of each other. Let's support each other as we dash towards the finish line in freeing Ambazonia.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Dr. Emma, I give you the last word.
Thank you for that. I think my friend and an able lawyer here summarized it well. But suffice to say that we must continue to acknowledge the efforts and the sacrifices by all those on the ground, those who have died, those who are currently languishing in the bushes. And we must also do all to avoid, as they would say in football, same goal, and running interferences on our own side, but rather try to collaborate. I wanted to point out to you, Chris, that there is a website called reliefweb.int that your audience might access to get and also submit information going on in La Republique. It's a UN website to get recent statistics on the atrocities going there. So we can always sharing information. Mind you, some of this information might be dated or not up to date as what we have, but that's what I wanted to share. In conclusion, all the world bodies are clear on one thing. The solutions that Biya has tried to throw at the problem caused are not working. The world is calling President Biya to end the hostilities, to end the war, and go to the negotiation table. There is no other way than for us to also orient and show the world our commitment, our readiness, our pragmatism, our peaceful orientation, and engage in the same process. So I still want to go back to my last appeal to say that we need to do all these things. And let's conclude by reminding our brothers and sisters who are collaborators and conspirators, along with the genocide that is being committed on us, to give the world a semblance of normality, that posterity will not judge them kindly. And we must also hold a ground in rejecting soundly that they do not represent us within a government that insists that they have not killed us. We are a second class in the land of our birth.
All right. Comrade Bo, very briefly, please.
If I'm going to conclude, let me just say, people of Ambazonia, look, you have done amazing work. Anywhere else where people have had to fight, it has taken them 25 years, 30 years to get to where you are. Please give yourself a big pat on the back. We referenced the people of Bergenville, and we were saying how great it was that they were getting there. But they started fighting in 1978. They had a ceasefire in 2001. They only voted this year to move to independence. What is going for Ambazonia is an amazing thing. It is that you are not negotiating what Eritrea negotiated or South Sudan, because you already have that. You already have your frontiers clearly defined. You have your recognition as a people. You have a UN resolution backing you. You have international treaties clearly delimiting your territory. The only thing our people don't have today is all of us going out there and rallying in support of a government that we pick and give ourselves, which does not have to be the perfect government, because it does not exist. I live in the United States. They fight each other, including over an impeachment right now. There is no perfect government. We need to rally around one so that it can provide us leadership. But the best way for us to do it, so that the international community can take us seriously, is for all of us to go out and play that one government with one vote, all of us, millions of votes, to tell the world it is absolutely not possible for anyone else to lord it over us.
All right, thank you very much. Emma, please, can you repeat the name of that website you just mentioned? I think some people want to
It's reliefweb.int/country/CMR. That's where the UN updates on a monthly basis data on the war, as well as resources. There's another website, I do apologize, I don't have it handy, for a listing of all partners working with the UN humanitarian office in Cameroon, that our viewers, I will give that to you, Chris, so you can share.
Get it in the background, yes.
So our viewers can be able to identify local partners in their areas that have been vetted by the UN and working with local population. And also for those restoration forces and their handlers to be able to know who these individuals are and give them unfettered access and get to people in need. Because that is an area that should be dear to all of our hearts, especially during this time of Christmas, to see what little relief we can bring to all these people. So cut that URL and share with you, Chris, and you can put it
all
up.
right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming on board. I want to believe our people have gained a lot listening to all of you, and Ground Zero has also learned a lot listening to you. And again, I just want to thank you for showing up. We'll have to do this again and again and again and again until we are back in Boya. Emma, thank you. Ghana, thank you. Ntumfo, thank you. And you have a great night.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Thank you as well. It's an honor and privilege.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was it. Before I leave, I'd like to remind you, as you have heard from our panelists, we need your support. When I say we, I mean this revolution. Whatever local government or county you come from, it needs your support. God has blessed us. We've taken this revolution so far, and this is not the time to look back. But the only way to stay on course is to support the revolution. So please, look for your local government, look for your LGA, support it. Pay your dues, your CID dues, and of course, support ABC. Without ABC, you won't have the opportunity to learn what you have learned today. So please, let's do so. Log on to abcambertv.org and subscribe to Amber ABC Club and support ABC with the $5, $10, $20 a month. We appreciate it. We want to thank you for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you. I have a very, very important guest, special guest, coming all the way from Ground Zero on Wednesday. You don't want to miss it. This guy is good. All right. Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. And I would like to end by saying good night to Ground Zero.
So we can roll from Cape to Cairo. listen carefully. Chinese are ruling the Chinese land. Japan is ruled by Japanese. England is governed by Englishmen. America is governed by Americans. So, Africa must be ruled by Africans. I wanna know the land. We must rule from Cape to Cairo. We must rule our purpose land. I say, we wanna know who owns the land. I wanna know who owns the land. Aslan, hey, Papa Aslan, Papa Aslan, Papa Aslan. It must be free. Angola want to know who owns the land. Mozambique want to know who owns the land. Namibia want to know who owns the land. I say, someone want to know who owns the land. Zimbabwe want to know who owns the land. African freedom fighters want to know who owns the land. Papa Slam. Now listen to the history. With the years since creation. With the years since creation. What else do I know? Since the time of sun and sand. Since the time of moon and stars. Since the time of air and sea. Since the time of men and things. We must rule from Cape to Cairo. I said we must rule our purpose land. Purpose land. Oh! Okay now I want to talk to my people. Ira Daniela, oh, I will know. Yeah, Ira Daniela, oh, I will know. Now we are the crossroads. On the Femo, London. Bill Sarah Danita. On the Femo, London. Open Maya Gera Baba. Yeah, open Jackson Yaraka. Open Mazizanya Vetonge.